What's up, y'all? I'm back with another video. I told you I was going to be pushing out a lot of content today for y'all. This topic right here is very important. It's detrimental to society. I feel like it's done a lot of damage. I'm definitely going to be speaking out against it, and so we can dive on into it. I'm definitely going to be talking about why people pleasing is detrimental to your society and why it's something that should be prohibited. God speaks against it in the Bible. It should be something that people should definitely reconsider before they live their life in the act of people pleasing, which in my mindset is also considered being self-assertive or living life based on other people's opinions or what they may think. So it also leads to it comes from a stem of lack of self assurance, lack of you're seeking validation, so you just don't understand how to, for one, validate yourself. So you're looking in other ways and for also to other people to do that. Once again, I mentioned that in the scripture in the Bible, it says that, many scriptures at that. So yeah, I've witnessed this a lot of times in my life. Many times people who are very incompatible within themselves, should I say, they go to other people and things to kind of find their own identity, and they do this in a lot of ways that are usually negative. Even in what they might think is positive, it can still have a negative outcome because they may place themselves in certain environments and do things that just aren't for them, but they aren't doing it. They're not doing it for their own happiness or comfort. They're doing it for the comfort of others. And sometimes a lot of people put on masks on a physical and also the spiritual, out of our physical and the spiritual sense that we cannot see sometimes if you don't have the discernment. But people that are walking in a righteous path, that are really on the aspect of purity, and we don't have to put on the falsified persona, should I say, for other people. We understand that we can kind of discern and see that spirit of it's like hopelessness and loss. But at the same time, people that seek validation, they usually are followers. They under a lot of peer pressure easy. So they seek validation and credibility from a lot of other people and things. And they do it with personality issues. They have personality issues. They do it with a lot of, I would say, materialistic items, money. They feel like money make them who they are. They feel like materialistic things, clothes, jewelry. Sometimes a lot of people go to drug uses, and they become something they not because they want to, they put on this character and they define themselves based off of what they see and hear, and sometimes what they may be secluded to mentally because they're trying to become somebody else based on what they feel is popular, what they feel is cool, and what the world is given it's a falsified persona. So the approval of the world and mankind is what a lot of people go to because they don't know who they are. So me, I've never been that type of guy. I've always been me. That's actually been something that I've been shunned upon for, because I've always been hated on, and a lot of people have been jealous of me because I always knew who I was. I think I mentioned this in another video. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but if I haven't, I'm saying it now. Whether it's at schools, jobs, sometimes fake friends I thought I had. Now, I never really had a big circle, but we all get a lot of people in our lives, or some people in our lives, should I say. We all have a certain circle as we get older, especially in our teenage years, where we think we got friends, and a lot of people are disguised the hatred, and sometimes it's not always it's not always so it's not always direct, so we may not know exactly what the envy and the jealousy may come from. And a lot of the things I've had to question, like, why are these people doing this? Why are they saying this? Or why are they treating me this way? But I see it was always because of me. Spiritually, I was always inclined with who I am. And for one, God had his hands on me. He was, doing things in my life that I couldn't even see at an early age, and placing me for one, who I am today and where I'm going that I still can't see, and one of the things that I'm going to accomplish in the future. But I never had to step outside of my comfort zone, outside of my body, and outside of my shell and what I was and who I am, to become something or prove anybody else's mindset or whatever another person might feel like is okay. If it didn't resonate with me, I never did it. First of all, I never did anything for anybody else. If you're talking about a persona-based aspect, I've always been me, and you take it or leave it. That's how I am. And a lot of people, they just couldn't accept that. A lot of people, if they don't identify with that and they cannot, resonate with that, if they don't respect that as being real, they don't understand it. They think it's fake, or they think that by them being fake, they look at me as fake. But that's how the devil got. He operates out of confusion. So what he doing is making the plot test with their mindset, telling them that he pulling them to their side by getting them involved in a lot of sometimes it may be criminal activity, drugs, early promiscuity with men and women, no matter the gender. A lot of people join gangs early to get acceptance. They hang around a lot of crowds. If you notice, a lot of people that have self-identity issues and lack of self-awareness, they don't have the discernment, and they don't have the coordination within themselves. They don't understand who they are. They seek validation from a lot of people, so they usually have a lot of friends, a lot of but they have big crowds around them. They always need a lot of friends and codependents and co-partners and things like that. So they walk in a lot of crowd. I always said that a wise man walk alone, a coward walks with a dozen. So, that's my personal opinion. Some may disagree, and that's fine. But, I've never been the type of person to be with a lot of people all the time, because honestly, I don't trust a lot of people. And then at the same time, I'm just fine with being me. If you notice that, like I said, if you're the type of person that can fight, and it's nothing wrong with being a people person, but that's not the same thing as being a people pleaser. If you feel like you got to do everything for someone to get validation or do something to see what somebody else think, flashy people, like I grew up around these people, so this is why I can attest to this and see it. I've either grew up around these people in my family, I know people like this because I went to school with them, I've been around them, or I just seen it on a daily basis in life, and I still am, so I can understand this. Some people may not, or some people may, some of y'all may see this and can identify with this behavior, and hopefully the spirit of rejection doesn't come over you where you disagreeing with it because of your ego and pride, and I'm gonna do another video on that as well. But that ties into that, because as you grow and you develop into that people pleasing mentality, pride, ego, validation, as I mentioned, lust, a lot of different things, so many different sinful natures and should I say sinful and harmful natures of the world, and the devil, he'll operate in your mind and your spirit and your body in many ways, and sometimes you may not even know, because your mind is distorted because you're not aligned with God, and that's what God speaks against. So if you're people pleasing, you're going against God without even knowing. So I'm gonna read some scriptures from the Bible that kind of coordinates to what I'm saying, and how God prohibits that, and he talks against that, shall I say. And this first verse is from Romans 12, verse 2. It says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." And I found this scripture very intuitive, and I found it very relatable to this topic, because as I mentioned about the flashy people, boastful, cocky, a lot of people that run in crowds, they usually become conformed to this world quick. And like I said, a lot of people, I think a lot of this topic, should I say it stems from early childhood development. A lot of people, they don't have righteous people in their corner, from whether it be a parental aspect or a family aspect, or people that can tell them and show them that it's okay to be you. And first of all, identify with who you are, and take that and run with it, and just try to be the best person you can every day. A lot of people think that, and I was, as a child, of course, we all were once blind and misled, and not sometimes by our own. In my case, I can't really say it was like that, but as trends came about, sometimes we want to follow that. So I was always brought up on the quickest fashion. So, in my mind, I would assume that my parents were as well, because we all dressed, very well. You know, everybody in my family dressed very well, so we all confided in that. We all confided in, you know, nice things. And it was kind of like, if you didn't wear that, or you didn't have nice clothes, if you didn't stay in a nice apartment or house, drive nice cars that were upkept and things like that, you know, you would feel like a sense of embarrassment. And then that would make you think that you would think about what others would say about me, or I can't pay my rent, or man, I gotta get some money quick, what they gonna think, or my child, my baby ain't in the nicest clothes, them Jordans just came out, everybody else got them, why he ain't got them? Or if he ain't got them, I gotta get some. And you know, his clothes ain't clean, his hair ain't cut, her hair ain't done. So you know, that's a competitive nature, and also it's like I said, it's a lustful nature with the world, because now you're going after the things of the world that's of this world. It's not of God. See, it's created by God, but it's, you know, the devil is behind this stuff. And then you'll become more provocative and promiscuous, and you'll become more susceptible to doing things for money to get it. And you know, that's how I came across a lot of people like that. So you know, and that's when I mentioned when it comes to trends. If you notice today, and I'm gonna do another video on this as well, I see how my mind, every time I mention something, this a new idea, and this how y'all see the creative nature and the aspects of, you know, discernment, and how God is with me. He put things on my mind, and I'm in the middle of doing a video right now, and I'm thinking of new ideas and, you know, new ways to transform the world and creativity. And I'm also putting everything I'm saying, I'm already, you know, putting this stuff in my notes and jotting it down to bring information to y'all and also help me, you know. But if you look at the trends of the world today, it's always negative. We don't really see a lot of positive trends. We always see something about, if a song come out, I'll give you an example. If it's a song come out, 9 times out of 10, that song has it's not a sensible meaning to it. So it's not gonna pull millions of people into a positive direction. It's gonna pull them into a negative direction, whether it's about selling drugs, doing drugs, you know, it could be even about a line in a song about a fashion brand. You know, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be about something we even never heard before, or a clothing brand that's expensive, and now everybody want it. So if you pay attention to fashion, that's just one example. Or if you pay attention to the ways of the world and social media, the industry, the entertainment industry is, you know, confided with social media, because it's a marketing tactic, and they use these artists as puppets and entertainers and whatever you do. But if you're in the industry, or if you pay attention to the industry like I do, then you know a lot of these songs that come out, they push narratives and agendas. So let's say, for example, when I remember when I was getting, you know, as like this drill stuff was coming up, and not just drill, but a lot of music, we was coming up in like Gucci, True Religion, and Burberry, and Montclair. Chief Keef was one of the biggest artists in the city at this time, and in the world. But in the city, of course, you could probably say he was the biggest and most influential in a lot of ways. I would say more negative, you know, but on the positive side, we could talk about fashion. Y'all know about the negative side. We done heard this a million times. But on the positive side, it was about fashion, you know, the cars. You talking about BMWs, Audis, Ferraris, Range Rovers, you know, Lamborghinis. And, you know, like I said, that would make a child, a young kid coming up from nothing, want that. And that would make you 9 times out of 10 think that that's what success is about. That's what, you know, if you see him successful and rich with money, you want to rap now, and you probably had no visions of rapping. But you got to understand, like, what another person desire and what another person is doing for money and to get on for fame and fortune, that may not be your path and your vision. And also, even with the trends, like I said, True Religion, I remember how popular that was. It got to a point, it was like, when I was in school, like as I mentioned, I was always a fly guy, so people knew me. We did have uniforms in school when I went to charter school, so we did have to wear uniforms, but we had something called dress down days, and you know, we had a chance to wear clothes, so we could wear our regular clothes from home and shoes, so people could see, okay, this is what he got, and you know, we could all see each other clothes, and you have to earn that. So it was based on your grades and attendance and things like that. And I always had perfect attendance and good grades, so that's how I got a chance to do it. And they was complimenting me. A lot of people was complimenting me on my fashion. Sometimes, even on regular school days with uniforms, I bring an extra pair of shoes, something like that, just to change from my school shoes into a pair of Jordans, Air Maxes, or whatever I might want to wear. Air Force Ones. I had so many pair of shoes, and still to this day, but that's not the point. But I remember when True Religion was so popular, I was a fan of it, not because it was popular. Of course, that probably had something to do with it, because I don't believe I had heard of it before he was out, before Keith was out. It wasn't so big on the magnitude. That brand was out since the early 2000s, if people don't know, but it wasn't really for our culture. It wasn't promoted towards our culture, should I say. Same thing with a lot of these brands that we surfacing now. Now we got, Tommy Hilfiger. Now we got Von Dutch. Now we got a lot of the stuff that's from the 2000s and 90s coming back out. Pelly, Avarex, a lot of stuff. So besides, a lot of it that was considered streetwear is like high-end fashion. So we got a lot of this, Ed Hardy and True Religion coming back again. So, but I remember, like I said, at that time, when I was probably maybe 13, something like that, 13, 14, if you ain't come to school with that, people will really look down on you. If they knew you had money, if you was making your own money, which I don't know how you was really doing that besides legally at that age, or if you came from a household with an income. And if they knew me, they knew I had parents that took care of me, and they provided the best way they could, and they knew me for being a guy that was fresh, and I came to school, I could put it on when I had a chance to. So, and I remember a lot of people that was wearing these brands, and we got on $180 Jordans and True Religion, and some people really did come with Burberry and Gucci and all that. So, and they'll be looking down on people that ain't got it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. At a young age, and if you see now, it's the same spirit of comparison, and then now it's just promoted in the songs. You hear a lot of the artists, they talk about that, and then a lot of women, a lot of women and men as well. I'm not going to school men, but a lot of us, we'll get something, or we'll become who we think we are, or who we think we're supposed to be, and it's not really who we want to be. It's who we think we're supposed to be. But we're doing it for the wrong reason. So we'll get a car, or we'll start a business because it's promoted, but it's not what we really want. So that's another thing. It's promoted through social media. It's what we hear other people doing. We know it's an easy way to make money. We just trying to get rich and make it out and move to another city. And I don't promote, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but you got to have a balance between money and morality. That's my opinion. Everybody don't think like that, of course. Y'all entitled to think how you want to, but people pleasing come in between that, because when you don't have a balance with your boundaries, then you'll set up to do anything. And a lot of this, when you talking about people, when you somebody that's worried about what others gotta say, you doing things for people. A lot of people, if you talking about from a male perspective, I'll put it like this. Sometimes we do things for women, or sometimes we do things to outshine guys. So, we could do it to outshine people in our family, or we might know somebody that's they probably got a certain car, and it might be the same car, but it's an older version. So we'll be like, I want that. But we might make enough money to get a newer version. So the competitive nature is unnecessary to me, because that's really hatred disguised as motivation, in my opinion. Because why are you looking at what another person got and trying to outdo them, when you should be focused on what you should be trying to do and what you place to do? Like, that's something I never did. There's nothing wrong with being inspired, but to try to outdo somebody is, to me, unnecessary. And that's people pleasing in a way. That's because you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for a reaction. You see what I mean? Most people are doing things for reactions, and that's big in today's society. A lot of people, they want to see, it's not about it ain't about like who you can. It's about who you can be nowadays. It ain't about what you are. It's about who you could be. And that's it used to be about how far you going in life and what your plans are. And I'm not saying this is a directed narrative towards everyone, but a lot of people that are lost mentally and don't have guidance, they doing things for the wrong reasons. So a lot of people want to carry certain weapons and get involved with the wrong things because it's trendy. It look good, but it's not good. It's dark. It's darkness, and we all know that light and darkness have no fellowship. So you got to choose. It's no in between. It's either you walking with darkness or light. Light is of God. Darkness is the way of the world, which is the devil. So and when you're so young, you don't really know that, especially when you're not embodied in the body of Christ, in the temple of Christ. When you don't have His Holy Spirit amongst you, you don't have that type of fellowship, so you don't know. And that's where the misled guidance come in at. So I feel like a lot of, and this don't just apply to young people, so don't get it twisted. A lot of people in general need to get more tuned in with God and understand that people pleasing isn't okay. It leads to a lot. I grew up with a flashy father. I seen a lot of things happen like that and what that could do. And then I wasn't told much. I wasn't told much about that. A lot of people in my family, should I say, because I grew up around hustlers. Everybody was making money illegally and selling, they was doing things hustling. I don't want to say too much on YouTube, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all can identify with it. If you from the hood and wherever you from, it ain't just Chicago, but if you know what I'm talking about and you from them trenches, then you can identify. I grew up around fast money, especially with men. That's what I seen. So that's what I knew. I knew whoever had foreign cars and jewelry, they got it like that. They didn't work. They didn't get a 401k. They didn't have a business. They didn't have loans. They didn't have stocks and crypto. We didn't come from that because we didn't know about that. And that's something they couldn't pass on to the next generation. And it was fast, and just as fast as they got it, it was gone. So, like I said, I grew up with that type of father who got money fast. My dad, that's how he was. And I was brought into this world, and my mind had to adapt to that. I had to, when you in that life, when you're around that type of lifestyle, you got to adapt to that. And, my dad was always a flashy guy. He was very, very flashy. Want the newest cars, and if it ain't even if it's not the newest, it got to be the loudest. I remember when he used to come and pick me up because, I live with my mom. My dad used to come pick me up wherever I may be, whether I'm at my mom's house, my aunt, my grandma. Like I can hear my daddy count from like 6-7 blocks away. That's how loud his speakers is. Paint got to be brand new. It's the loudest, brightest paint on the block, 22, 24-inch wheels, interior done. Like that's how his cars was, so you could automatically know, oh, okay, this guy, he getting money. Like if you don't know him, you could automatically see that. And that, and I'm gonna make a video on that too. It's attention. Everybody get attention in life. And you can depict that. It's the right attention and the wrong attention. But it does tie into that narrative of people pleasing. And then, with that came a lot of, jealousy, envy, hatred. A lot of things came with that. Attention from the police because they want to know, what you doing to make money? How you riding like this? You in these poor communities, but you got a car cost $20,000 and you put all this money into it. Well, step out the car. So a lot of things I had to adapt to that I was seeing. Like I said, I ain't gonna expose too much because he gonna see this, and I don't care what he think, but he need to see this, and a lot of people do. But he probably understand. He understand, but he probably wouldn't want to, want me to give out too much info, and I understand. But he should take accountability. But yeah. But like I said, when you live in that life or any type of lifestyle, it ain't just even the fast way. When you doing anything for attention or any type of validation of others, you won't go far. And that's my opinion, and I've seen it happen personally. I can't say I'm not guilty of that. I've done it before, to a very low extent, not to a high magnitude, should I say. An example I can give is probably women, getting girls. Like that's something I could say. It can be fashion. I could say that. A lot of the times I really had no control of what I had because I couldn't buy it at a certain time. But when I did, I was always, okay, I like this. This is good. This is something that's it looks good. We get caught up in what look good, and then before you know it, attention comes. So that's why I'm saying, but you don't, be honest. If you don't, ain't nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. I'm not saying that. Everybody should, take care of yourself. Look your best. When you look good, you feel good, and I ain't saying don't look. You just come on any camera or go outside looking like nothing. But money. When I got to having my own money, I spent a lot of money on fashion. I spent a lot of money on clothes and taking trips, and a lot of this could have been invested into what I'm trying to do now. Now I reflect, I got like so much money in my closet that I can't get back. And I can't say it was for other people, but just so I was so caught up in how I was brought up, and of course, lack of money management. I didn't understand really what I was doing because it came and went so fast with my different avenues of employment. It wasn't long lasting. So I wanted to make the best of it. And of course, I thought that meant treating myself, buying what looked good, buying what make me feel good, going places that make me feel good. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes we got to balance the time and the place. It's a time and a place when you should be doing things with your money. If you ain't in a position to do it, no matter what it is, you shouldn't. And like I said, and you definitely shouldn't be doing it for another person. So that's what I could say. Like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to when I was in school, I was wearing a lot of the stuff because it was fashionable, and I never done nothing directly. I was probably doing a lot of this stuff indirectly, and I would say blindly. That's a better word. I still was people pleasing because, like I said, I was always known for the eyes was on me. Girls had their eyes on me, guys admired me, or some of them didn't even like me, but they gave props to me, like you know how to dress, little big bro, or I like what you got on, and a sense of confidence come with that. That's just how it is. As opposed to me having counterparts or people that in class that didn't have it like me, they probably shunned me, or if they didn't even do that, they were like stayed to themselves. They really didn't have a lot of friends and things like that. And who knows? Or some of them, they began to do other things to get what I had or what others had. Like I said, so there's so many ways to break this down. It's crazy. But like I said, in today's society, I feel like this is very important because we see a lot of our youth going so downhill with this particular spirit that they got in them, and they don't even know, and they don't even understand how, because they so misled, so young, and that's very important. People pleasing is serious, and that's something that it needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped, and I just feel like a lot of guidance and uplifting can help that, especially from the parental aspect in that home, because if you don't got that, if you don't got the foundation laid out at home, you're gonna be lost as a young child, because when the child is born, the first people or person, I'm hoping it's two people, but the first people to see is his parents. So if you don't have influential figures in your household, you'll look to the world, and that's something that you don't want to do. I wouldn't encourage that, usually blindly or from an aspect of unwillingness, or should I say when you feel like you don't have another option, that's what a lot of people do. That's why a lot of people turn to the streets, or they turn to what they think is love and compassion, or a best way to make money, and it's not. It's not the right way, because, the one you should be turning to is God. At the end of the day, we can't take none of this with us. I'm on camera right now. I'm looking my best. Of course, this ain't my best, but I look good. I'm presentable in camera, and that's of course a part of what I'm doing. This is a job. This is a part of my way of income. This is something that I do, and like I said, it's effortless. And like I said, don't get it twisted. If you like nice things, you like nice things. There's nothing wrong with that. But once again, it's a way you go about doing and obtaining everything. It's a way about it's all about how you live your life, and how far are you willing to go to get it. What are you willing to do? That's just how I personally feel. And I would say to a person that have that spirit or that mentality, that whatever they doing, it ain't just clothes at this point. It ain't just shoes. It ain't just materialist items. If they doing anything, or have the mentality that they got to do something to please another person, that they should really analyze their inner character or their self-conscious aspect, and realize, what are they really missing to analyze who they are internally. What is it that they need, or who do they need? Or are they missing a parent? Are they missing a loved one? Did they miss out on that as a child to lead to this life? Because idolatry comes with that as well. That's another thing. And there's so many different ways. It's just so many different ways that you could be misled with that type of mentality without knowing. And that's another thing too. So, like I said, this topic can go so far. But I hate to see, I hate to see anybody go downhill. But I hate to see a lot of young people with life and potential, go downhill, lose their lives, go to prison. A lot of things that we seeing, or not even, and if it ain't just that, a lot of them, they run with what's positive, or what they think is positive. They run with what's promoted, and it's usually negative. And it's all a part of the trends and the negative aspects of life that's promoted through media, and that brainwashing. It's called programming. So this is the people pleasing spirit. So they feel like they got a lot of young women feel like promiscuity and giving their body up is cool, and that's not. But the music and the influencers and the young women that we see, young or old, some of them, they push that. They tell them that a man that ain't got no money ain't worth nothing. If he ain't put no money in your pockets, he ain't nothing to you. And that's false. That's false. I'm not saying a man should be a provider, but if you're talking about a full-blown relationship, marriage, of course that's something you should discern and understand who you with before that even come to that, in my opinion. But money does not make a man. That's my personal opinion. Times get hard for people. I personally feel like with that situation, a lot of them, they go after people that have money, but, it's a price with that. It's a price with going after, what you think you may need, or what you think is acceptable. And that's why it comes back to what I'm saying. When it comes to this people pleasing thing, when you lost internally and mentally, you don't really understand consequences until it's too late. So that's why I said I hate to see a lot of people tarnish and lose their life, and sometimes it ain't even in the physical form. It's you already lost to me when you living like that, because, and everybody can be forgiven. God forgives all, and it's never too late to change. But I just feel like with a continuous lifestyle and a continuous pattern of pleasing the world, the devil will continue to get a threshold on you, as I mentioned, with all these different spirits of, the aspects of lust and, greed. It's just so many different things that come with that people may not know. But like I said, we see a lot of young men that's taught that, okay, you ain't got on designer clothes, or, your watch you ain't got a Rolex or AP, or you don't drive foreign cars, you ain't getting no money, or you ain't making six figures, you ain't getting no money, or it's just so much that's promoted by a lot of people. And it's so crazy because a lot of the people that promote things or say things, they don't even know who they are. Or they'll tell you to get this and get that, or this is what make you, and they don't have it. And that's what a lot of us don't know. So, never let I'm gonna do a video on that too. Never let materialistic things or money define you, because to me, I don't respect people like that, honestly, because that's a moralist person. And if you got people like that around you, you shouldn't trust them. I feel like you should depart from them. If you can't uplift them, if you can't help them change and see the light, you should depart, because you got to understand, with a person like that, they don't see anything besides what they want to see. And they see money, and they see what they want to obtain. So there's no in between with that. So with a person with that mentality, there's no end to the risk they're willing to take to get that. And you may be the one that may be on the list to get out of the way. So you got to understand, if you got it and they want it, they coming for it. So that's why it's another thing, you don't want to be around a person with no honor and integrity, because it says a lot about you, of course. And then also, you can't trust them. And me, I don't like to confide or congregate in people that I can't build trust with. If I got to look over my shoulders around you, that's not a healthy relationship. I don't want you around me. I distance myself quick from people. So I encourage you all to do the same. People pleasing is something that, it definitely should, you should analyze that. If you're embodying that type of mentality, and if you're not, I salute you. Continue to do your own thing. Carve your pathway out. Understand your path that God has carved for you, should I say. Build your own lane. Understand that, things take time. Don't compare yourself, because that'll leave you in the aspect of misery, and you'll be your mindset will be all over the place, and you'll be stressed out, and you'll be wondering how to get things and obtain things quick. And and I always say, and I've always lived by this code and this honor and this mentality. The fast way leads to the fast life leads to a fast demise. So the faster you live, the faster you go. So you don't want to earn things quick, because there's no appreciation in it. There's no honor in it. There's no compassion and love. God didn't give it to you. If you whatever you did to get it, even if you worked, then but it's the mentality with it. If you're getting it for another person, if you're trying to rush and hurry up and buy a car or get an apartment, y'all know the people that get these apartments and they holding their keys on Facebook, Instagram. I ain't knocking nobody, do your thing, but that's something that I wouldn't do. It's, for one, it's kind of like allowing a lot of people like that to see access into your personal life. Same way with the car dealerships. We see a lot of people vlogging and recording videos and pictures of getting their first car. As I mentioned once again, it's good attention and bad attention. You never know who's watching nowadays. In this day and age we live in the era where betrayal, hate is at an all-time high. A lot of these people do this stuff for attention. That's not me. So when I get my car, no one will know unless you see me in it. My house, my apartment, you wouldn't know unless you see. You know what I'm saying? There will be very few people invited to these places. So that's another thing. I mean, what good will it do me to show off everything I got? That it's no purpose to me. That there's no. I don't gain solidarity in that. I don't see the comfort in that. I don't know. Everybody live life differently, you know. I'm not here to tell nobody what to do and what not to do. I'm here to encourage and inspire, as I said once before, and I stand on that, whether you like it or not. And I pray that this reaches a lot of people and I can, gain not just an audience, but I pray that I can, get a lot of people to, see what's real, because reality is hidden nowadays, and it's reality TV, but that's not real. So we got the social media and reality TV in front of us, but when it's very few people and very few aspects of living that you see is real, and real life is outside of what's promoted, and that's what I want to talk about, and that ties into this topic, like I said. So if you're comfortable within yourself, and which I know a lot of people that are, I've ran across a lot of people in life that they just simply don't care. So a lot of people, they really, they act how they want to act, dress how they want to dress, they don't do what others do, and I respect them for that, because I see that they're genuine, we have the same mentality. We can confide in one another, and those are usually the people that, whether we communicate every day or communicate often or not, when I see them, it's always mutual respect, and I honor that, because a lot of people that live for a viral moment, or they want attention, or they get they live in the complacency aspect, or a lot of people, they stuck on today, but they don't look at tomorrow. They don't see tomorrow, and that's another thing in our generation, in this time period that we living in, old and young, So I got more scriptures as well, that I can provide on this topic. Let me see where this is coming from. This one is from 1 Corinthians 10:33. It says, "Just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved." That just really tied into what I was just saying, how I pray that I can have the audience that I'm speaking to, and I can reach an audience that can confide in my message and understand that, you can still, it's okay to be you. And, you don't have to people please. You don't have to do anything for validation and verification, because, that's temporary. But, the Lord's verification, the Lord's, you want the Lord's yes. You don't want the man's yes. Man's yes is on earth. It's in this world. God's yes is in the afterlife. That's when your soul leave your body, when he calls you home, because only he knows the time and the place and the hour when we're not going to be, and we take our last breath. So you want his approval. Like I said, man's approval is temporary, and it's usually it's biased, it's non-genuine, it's not authentic, it's not for your benefit, and you'll always be chasing that, so that's something that with that spirit of people pleasing, that's another thing. You'll always be doing something to keep a person happy, or you want somebody to say, okay, they like what you're doing, or you got this and they like that, and you're doing something right. And instead of the honesty of a person that's loyal and righteous to you, you'll stray away from that, because you're so used to hearing yes, or you're so used to being praised, or trying to praise others, should I say. But when the persons tell you that that's the wrong thing, if you have this egotistical mindset, which is what they come with, you don't want to hear it. So, and that's where the conviction come in, that if and that's not for me to give, that's for Christ. If you embody the Holy Temple, if you have you had the Holy Spirit, should I say, that's for Christ. That's not for me, because I'm not God. I'm just God's vessel of truth that he used to spread his knowledge, and my testimony as well. I'm not perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect, so I don't want anyone to watch these videos and think that I'm just talking out of judgment, or it's just a personal. Yeah, I am speaking from a personal standpoint, but I have my days where I have my life. I'm living life still, and there's things I need to work on, as I just clearly mentioned. And it's not just money and materialistic things, It's different things with different grudges I've held. It's a lot of things, addictions to food, a lot of things. It's so much. It's just complacency, laziness. So I'm still working on a lot of things with myself, and that's why I say I'm nowhere near perfect. But I know myself, and when you know yourself, you can admit, you can take accountability, so you can understand the steps it takes, and you can understand, you can hear God's voice speaking to you, and you can know how to seek Him when you don't know sometimes. But at the same time, when you're accountable, when you know yourself, and you're comfortable in yourself, you don't need approval of another person, and you definitely don't need another person to tell you when you're wrong, or which it wouldn't hurt, of course, from another person that really care, but you don't need that. See, a person that's people pleasing, they need that, and that's something that it's kind of difficult to reach a lot of people like that, like I said, because a lot of them have pride and ego, and they so lost in the devil usually have a threshold over them with all these different spirits they don't understand, so they don't see where they're going wrong, should I say. But yeah, man, I just pray for a lot of people that they wake up before it's too late, because I got people that's gone because of this, to the cell, to the grave. I got people that's still here living like this. I know people that I may not be friends with them, and we may not be cool, but they live their life, and they ain't here because of that same way. And like I said, to a lot of people that feel like, if you feel like, life is life and it is what it is, things like that, if that's your mindset, I encourage you to think differently, because that's not true. Life changes. You could change. I'm changing. We all are here for a purpose. Whatever your purpose is, I seek you. I challenge you to seek that, should I say, if you don't know. Pleasing another person isn't. You can inspire. Like I said, it's nothing wrong with being motivated. It's nothing wrong with being inspired. There's nothing wrong with inspiring, if that's your purpose, if that's what you choose to do. But to try to stun or try to do something to try to get appraisal and approval, that comes with a price usually. And like I said, usually when a lot of people that follow these trends and things, as I mentioned once again, they don't really get it. They don't really understand what they're indulging in, because they're being tricked. That's why when you got this discernment, and when you connect it with God, and when he's speaking through you, and when you just know right from wrong, the devil can't get a hold of you like that. So you understand the patterns of life, and how you got the conviction and the Holy Spirit to lead you in life. And when a lot of people don't have that, they fall victim easily to a lot of the toxicity in life, and how the devil works, because that's what he wants. He don't want you aligned with the Spirit of Christ, because that's what's going to lead you into a righteous upbringing, and also that's what's going to lead you to the utmost way of living. And the devil is going to confuse you into what you may think is a right way of living, because you might have what you want materialistically, but your soul is empty. You're doing it for the wrong reason. Yeah, you got it, and you'll look down upon people that don't. There's a lot of people that do that. That's something that I don't respect as well. I know I give an example of that too, and it could be people pleasing. I don't know. I can't say. The reason I say I don't know is because I really don't know these people. But at the same time, I do know, because I have discernment. Many times I've had a lot of jobs, so and it's funny, because as I mentioned, I mentioned this before in one of my videos when I talk about jobs weren't for me. I used to look at jobs, and even for my first one I had, and I used to look at jobs, and I used to think about how I used to get treated, and I used to have a lot of verbal battles with people, and then, the spirits that they embodied was just so evil. And I would wonder, like, what's making these people treat me like this? Why are they abusing their authority? They making up lies on me, saying I'm doing things that I'm not. It's proven. They can run cameras back and see that I'm not. They telling me, they cursing at me. And now we in battles, going back and forth. I'm demanding my respect, telling, watch your mouth, you ain't gonna say that to me. So it's just so much nonsense and pettiness, and like I said, and I had to think, and I be talking to my mom about this, and she be telling me, she said, the reason you go through this and the reason that you've been going through this for a while is because, those people, they living for a position, and you got a purpose, so they don't have that. She said they want to be you. They wish they were you, and most of them are older, and there ain't no shot to nobody that's old, that's working or whatever you're doing, make your money and, feed your family. But the spirit, she said, you got a spirit inside you that they don't have. And she said they see that you're young, talented, you're going in higher places that they may not be going, and they try to tear you down. And I said, okay, that do make sense. And that's true. And I wasn't looking at it like that first, because I'm thinking it's more of like it is abuse of authority, don't get me wrong, but I was looking at it more like it's just jealousy, or I was actually confused on what it was initially, until I began to continuously go through these things. And then God just spoke to me. He said, don't do it. Unfortunately, I wish I would have listened. And I'm still struggling with that as well, trying to find a way of a solid income to, step away from that, because, I've come to find out that just ain't me. Not to say I don't mind working the job, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we get caught up in what's the norm and what's promoted and where we come from, and what's the ideal way of making money. And it's not all about money. Sometimes it's about freedom in your spirit and your mind, because that's priceless. And a lot of these jobs, all of them, they don't offer me that. And I can't get that back. I can get a lot of money. I can get all the paychecks and vacations and part-time, pay time off or whatever. I can get that as many more, especially working for myself. But the mental torment that I go through, I can't get that back. But tying it back to people pleasing, I noticed that a lot of these people that work at the positions, and they go off of the titles, and they all have someone else to answer to. So that lets me know that they were put in place to do their job, in which I'd never see them doing. I don't know if their job is to sit down and get rid of people that really do something. I don't know what it is, because I don't ever see these managers doing manager roles or supervisors. I don't know what they do. It never appears to me that they're doing what they should, like I am. And as I mentioned, they fire me and try to convict me and falsely accuse me of things I never even did, lie on me, or don't even want to train me for the job, get mad when I make mistakes, or when I ask for training, they ignore me and things like that. They got the spirit of people pleasing, and I can tell and I can see that, because they want to be some. They want to prove how tough they are. They want to use their title and authority against me as a way of fear. So they try to do it in front of a lot of people to show that, okay, if I can talk to him like this, I can do you worse. But with my morale standpoint as a man, I don't go for that. So I let it be known, hey, look, I ain't backing down. So, whatever you think you can do, or whatever you saying to me, my principles and my morals is going against that. So, it's just gonna have to be that. I'm gonna stand up for a fight, and if that costs me my job, that's fine. But I always tell these people one thing. I always tell them, you're not as important as you think you are. And I tell them, you got a job, you got a position, but I got a purpose. That's two different things, So when you understand who you are, you know where you're going. That go back to what I was just saying. And a lot of them don't know where they're going. A lot of employees, they don't know where they're going. They just see one thing. You know, I see so much more, and I see more for a lot of other people. I see more for y'all. I hope y'all see more for yourselves. You know, I just like I said, I want to encourage you guys to stop embodying what we see as popular, or if it's everything that's fruitful to, you know, the flesh, or the if it looks good to the naked eye, doesn't mean it's always good to us. You know, it's good for us, should I say. And I was always told by my mom, everything that look good ain't good. And I had to grow older and wiser to see what she mean by that. And I definitely see. And I think she, of course she was always taught this, so she passed that knowledge on to me, thankfully. But as I mentioned back with my father, I think by her dating him and being with him, and of course reproducing and having me, I think that was one of the main reasons why she told me that, because she knew that I had him and a lot of the male figures in my life that was, you know, showing me negativity and making money the wrong way and driving cars and having a lot of women and acting out of that lustful nature and, you know, pride and ego and cockiness, people pleasing and things like that. So, you know, that's why she told me that. And she do tell me you know, you don't need all of that. You don't need flashy things. You know, and cause you know I like nice things. I like cars. I've always, you know, I came up on it, so I actually do like cars. You know, I really do. I know a lot about them. I could talk about them. I know cars. I know the engines, sports, and all that. So she said, you don't need a fancy car to show that you got money, or if you successful. You don't need that big house. Like, you know, she big on that. That's true. And like I said, it's nothing wrong with wanting better. It's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. You know, that's what we all were put here to do. God put us here to, of course, do His will, but do the labor, and we'll receive the fruitful benefits of our labor as long as we stay patient and put the work in. But the way you exhibit the rewards of that is up to you. That's what I would say. So that's what I would give anybody advice beforehand, should I say, about that. But yeah, you know, the spirit of people pleasing is serious. It's harmful. It's detrimental. It's something that should be examined. You should look. I would say, you know, so many examples of, you know, near-death experiences, death, jail, betrayal. It's so much I could say, but you know, it's just so much. I don't really know many good things that I've come from that. You know, some people have fallen into substance abuse from trying one thing because it looked good, or it's talked about on a song, or, you know, you might see your favorite rapper or artist or whoever doing it and talking about it. You tried, and you know, you know, it don't work out for you like it worked out for them, or they may not really be doing it. That's another thing I was saying. So now you might, you know, fall victim to some people OD off these things, and you know, they go into rehabilitation, or some of them, you know, they get so hooked on it, they spend their last money. So like I said, because it look good and they want to try everything that look good, it ain't good for you. So, you know, like I said, you know, y'all just got to use a level of discernment. Understand that it's okay to, you know, be you. Understand, you know, your mission. You know, you got to know your mission in life. Know your mission. Know what you was called to do. Understand that everything of this world is put here for a reason. But you got to know what's for you in this world. You know, you got to know, you know, it's a time and a place to obtain and do everything. And everything that's around you and everything that you see and everything that's promoted is not for you to indulge in. Especially when it's negative and it's unrighteous and unfruitful, and when it's something that's causing self-destruction and things like that. And a lot of the darkness can be disguised as light. So I encourage a lot of people, especially young, to get fellowship with God and declare Jesus as your Lord and Savior, because when you got that Holy Spirit, you'll get discernment, and that'll save you a lot of time, that'll save you a lot of stress, that'll save you a lot of fatal experiences, that'll save you a lot of things that could go wrong in your life. You'll have the discernment from God, and He'll lead you along your journey of life, because the people-pleasing spirit is something that God goes against, and with that spirit, in my opinion, it'll set you up to mock Him. And I want to speak about one more scripture on this, on what God says. It says, this is from Philippians 4 verse 6. It says, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So that's what that one says. So yeah, once again, to close it out, understand things take time, man. Anything that you get fast, it'll go just as fast as you got it. Living fast, lead to a faster minds. I pray that y'all can understand and wake up before it's too late. I just hope y'all can delay that, or not delay, but dismantle and not even indulge in that spirit of people pleasing, because it ain't gonna lead you nowhere. We've all done wrong. We've all fallen short of God's grace and mercy, but He forgives us all. So it is what it is. And seek righteousness and peace, and with the Word of God, with discernment, experiencing life, of course, because we all understand that experience is the best teacher. You will, and I will, of course, excel and succeed, and that's what I pray for. And I'm here to uplift and encourage as well, like I mentioned before. So yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna get this video put out for y'all. Coming at y'all with another one. Y'all stay consistent. If you haven't already, subscribe. Get this video a thumbs up so I can get an algorithm. Should I say? I need all this content in the algorithm. It needs to be heard. My voice definitely is impeccable. I feel like it's something that I got a voice that could reach millions. Eventually it will. And I just gotta, y'all stay patient, man. Watch me on my journey. I pray that y'all really remain in the Word of God. Stay true to yourself. Understand that nobody could be you like you, and only time to tell where you're going, and be dedicated towards your mission. Only you can understand where you're going. So just be patient and dedicated, and things will work out. Don't be too anxious and overly exerted into this world, because you don't want to fall victim into the lustful and sinful nature, because it's easy to do it. So like I said, with that being said, I'm gonna get this one put out for y'all. I love y'all, appreciate y'all. Subscribe, like, comment, share, and get this on the algorithm for me. I appreciate it.